I'm curious what you, a congressman, think about all of this.
Well, look, I was there in the Capitol. I was in the Cannon building when that took place. And here's my view of it. If someone was out there caught up in the protest and just showed up and was swept in and went inside, I have a very different view of it than people who smash down buildings, threaten people with violence, hit law enforcement officers. So I don't know the pardons, but my guess is that some of the people, from what you're saying, who pardoned it actually engaged in violence and destruction of property. And my view is I thought Trump was going to be against crime. I mean, the law and order president. So why is any kind of violence on federal property not zero tolerance?
Do you mean, so I think there's only 6 commutations. You're saying of the 15, you think it's likely that some of those probably did engage in violence?
Yeah, and the person for the seditious conspiracy, I mean, did he, if 22 years, you're sentenced to 22 years, you probably have done something that led to an imminent threat of violence. Maybe not.
Wasn't he even there?
Probably done something is a dangerous way to phrase it.
Well, I trust the law. I trust the jury process there. And yeah, I mean, we're probably going to disagree on this issue, but I fundamentally believe that you can't go into the Capitol or plan things to go into the Capitol and engage in violence. That's different. Look, there were school teachers, they're dentists. They show up. They wanted to show their support. They got caught up in a frenzy. The doors are open. They go in. If they don't threaten anyone, don't have violence. I get that there was some of that was taking place, and I wouldn't go after that. But the people who were engaged in actually breaking the buildings, hurting law enforcement officers, or planning to do that, those people should be held accountable.
I completely agree. I think that's why I've said commutation makes sense, only because if someone shoved a cop or pushed them 3 years, 4 years is a long time to be in prison for like shoving a cop. But for people who didn't know what was going on and walked into a building when the gates were down or open and got trespassed, I agree with. I'm curious what you guys think.
Well, I think the biggest problem here is trusting that process, right? Because it was obviously abused. I have a friend, he's a photojournalist, he's independent. He was there that day. He wasn't even a registered Republican, but he was in there. He went inside, took photos, and walked out. He ended up getting sentenced to 4 years in prison for doing just that. So when it comes down to the actual process, it was obviously being abused there. They're painting him in court as a hardcore Trump supporter, and this was an insurrection, and painting him that way in court. That's obviously a completely abused system right there. Because just walking around, nonviolent, didn't do anything violent, walking around, taking photos, and getting 4 years from that's completely unimaginable.
And there were a lot of enhancements on the sentences that turned out to be all unconstitutional by SCOTUS. They were adding to the sentences where they shouldn't have been. But to add to all of this, George Washington, what?
You can tilt your mic down.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I feel more comfortable. George Washington pardoned everybody who participated in the Whiskey Rebellion. And then Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Johnson pardoned everybody, all the Confederates. So it's kind of a thought that once this is done, once you've made it through, once one side has won and one side has lost, quote unquote, just it's good. It's good for the country to just move forward and not to hold on to it, just to start to heal in that way. What do you think about that?
I think, first of all, if it was a Democrat engaged in reconciliation, that's different than your own party. But look, that's why I said if someone was there, if this photojournalist is true, that he just walked in and took pictures, and if those facts are true, then I'd be very sympathetic to that person not being behind jail. And in general, I do think we have to find ways to come together as a country. But there were people who actually, smashed the Capitol building, who committed assault against law enforcement officers.
Yeah.
And that should just be, forget the politics of it. This is, I view the Capitol as a sacred place. Like that.
Do you believe in the pardons for the Confederates, who probably did some pretty bad things too?
But as much as some of the pundits want us to think we're in a civil war, we're not. So I think that was a different context.
Let me ask you this. So I think the challenge that many of us have is on May 29th, 2020, there were several thousand far-left activists, I would say many of them extremists, who tore down the barricades of the White House, firebombed the White House grounds, set fire to St. John's Church. Yeah. We did not see Capitol Police launch an investigation. We did not see FBI raids across the country. The president was forced into the emergency bunker. The corporate press, the media mocked him over it, calling him bunker boy. So That happened well before January 6th. Seeing the photos of the smoke rising up in D.C. all across the city from the chaos and the rioting, seeing no law enforcement action, for me, I'm kind of like, well, what else is new? I've been covering protests for a decade. Then when January 6th happens, to see a nationwide raid that actually resulted in, there was a woman in Alaska who was wrongly identified. They stormed her house. And I'm thinking to myself, they're willing to send the feds to Alaska to raid the wrong woman's home, and they won't even do a simple local investigation into who set fire to St. John's Church. More importantly, who firebombed the guard post of the White House. I mean, the White House grounds was on fire.
Yeah, there was about 60 Secret Service agents that were injured that night, dozens of police officers, dozens of vehicles, obviously St. John's Church as well.
There should be accountability for that. I'm not defending left rioters and protesters, and if they are committing damage to the White House, if they're threatening law enforcement officers, absolutely, they should be going to prison for that. I mean, after a trial. I get your point. You're saying that the police, you feel the law enforcement are singling out people because they're conservative and supporting Donald Trump in a way they aren't on the left. Now, I'll tell you, on the left, they feel the opposite in this country. I mean, it's everyone is coming from their perspective of bias. The left says, no, the cops target folks on the left more. My view is, how do we get to a point in this country where we can agree that we should allow for protests, give people the benefit of the doubt, but when people are engaged in violence, there should be zero tolerance.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.